Hey everyone, it's me again, Dr. Whimsy, and today's a fun topic, and it's a topic that I have talked about over and over and over again, and I decided what the heck, I would cover it again. I've written articles about this subject, I've spoken in lectures about this subject, and today we're talking about it again, and that is the much maligned soybean. Yes, you've heard a lot of rumors probably about the poor innocent soybean and how it's been maligned and criticized. And today I'm going to talk about myths versus facts about soybeans. So there are a lot of myths about the soybean. A little bit about the soybean. It originates in Asia, and it is actually one of the main protein sources for many parts of the world. If you look at China, I actually have been to China. It was a pretty amazing trip, and saw plenty of soybeans being consumed. It was and remains a protein source in areas where people don't have access to a lot of meat, and it also is more cost effective. It's a great protein source also if you're a vegetarian or a vegan. So many people who were Buddhist monks and nuns who did not eat meat, who were pure vegetarian, they relied on the soybean for protein. An example of that would be the Shinto practice, and they're doing quite well and quite nice on the soybean. So I'm going to go through some of the myths about soybeans. I'll link the clinical findings below, and I'll let you decide. But here you go. So there's one of the number one myths about soybeans is that it's a highly allergic food. When we talk about an allergy, when we're talking about a true allergy, a person might have swollen lips, anaphylactic shock, they might get hives. If it's an extreme allergy, we'll give an EpiPen. Patient might even have to go on oxygen, depending upon how severe that allergy is. Now that's different than something like a sensitivity. A sensitivity might be gas, bloating, upset stomach, feeling awful after you eat something, and just not feeling right. Sometimes people can develop a sensitivity if they eat something too often, or if they just have trouble digesting it. It is true that a lot of people, particularly in the Western world, have trouble digesting soybeans because they have a very thick skin. And so if you are eating edamame when you go to have your sushi, those are the soybeans that come whole. I'm putting pictures up, so hopefully you're able to see everything, but those are delicious, but you really want to chew them really well. You also might want to take a digestive enzyme. I like Digest Spectrum because it's got a lot of enzymes in it that help digest complex carbohydrates, so you're not going to get that gas and upset stomach when you eat something like a soybean. If you think that you have a true allergy or you really are having an adverse challenge to soybeans, consider taking a digestive enzyme, see if that helps. If you've been diagnosed with a sensitivity to soybeans, obviously you don't want to have soybeans. But if it's just a situation of an upset stomach, chew it really well, take a digestive enzyme. You may also want to consider doing fermented soybeans like miso or tempeh. Both of those have been fermented, so they may be a little bit easier to digest. Give it a whirl, particularly if you're on a plant-based diet or if you're reducing consumption of animal products, which is something that we support here on my channel. I don't think people have to be 100% plant-based, depending upon your state of health. But I do think that minimal consumption of animal products is associated with being healthy longer. So I'm not a fan of people that consume large quantities of animal products simply because research does not support that that's associated with longevity. In fact, decreasing consumption of animal products and eating more foods in their whole form is associated with longevity. So that was the first myth that I wanted to talk about, sensitivity versus an allergy. The second myth that I wanted to address is the idea that soybeans contain estrogen. Soybeans do not contain estrogen, okay? Soybeans do not contain estrogen. Estrogen is a hormone. It's produced, animals produce it. It is a growth hormone that helps tissue to grow in our body. It's involved in certain processes in the body. For example, in a woman, we have three types of hormones, three types of estrogen, what we call E1, E2, E3, and they each do different things in the body. They help our bones to grow. They help the uterus to function properly. It's also produced, forms of estrogen are produced in fat and help with tissue growth, breast tissue, for example. So as estrogen levels decline, we see risk for osteoporosis increases. We see a breast tissue can drop. We can lose some of the breast tissue. So that is not found in soybeans. Soybeans contain phytonutrients that appear to, those are nutritional components that do bind to tissue in ways that are similar to estrogen. We call them phytonutrients, and they do not appear to cause cancer. In fact, quite the opposite. By binding to this tissue in a way that's similar to estrogen, it appears that they decrease risk for certain types of cancers that a person might be vulnerable, that are what we call estrogen positive cancers. People that carry the gene, for example, BRCA1, BRCA2 would be example of people that are susceptible to those types of cancers. There's been a myth going around for a really, really long time that people who have a past medical history of BRCA1, BRCA2, or who are vulnerable to breast cancer because of this estrogen positive association with breast cancer, that they should not do soybeans. The data simply does not support that. Instead, what the data supports is that those cultures where women consume more soybeans, more soy, we see decreased risk of breast cancer. And we think the reason for that is because what the soybeans are doing is that because they bind to that tissue where estrogen normally would, they inhibit estrogen from binding, and so they inhibit the growth of cancer on that tissue. Hopefully I explained that in a way that's that can be understood. When a substance does that, when a substance binds to the tissue, inhibiting the estrogen from binding and causing cancer to grow, that's called, if it's a drug that does that, we call that a selective estrogen receptor modulator. Basically, in plain English, that is a substance that blocks estrogen from binding and increasing the risk for cancer growth. So that is why we think that soybeans may inhibit the growth of cancer. The third thing I want to talk about is genetically modified organisms, or when we genetically change a substance. Now, we've been playing with the genes of plants for a very long time. We've been playing with the genes of animals for a very long time. Became very popular during the Victorian era. For example, we now have foods that we never ate before because we began to play with the genetics of plants. An example would be broccoli rabe, broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts. These are all delicious and healthful foods, but they were genetically engineered over time, starting with the Victorians. Same is true for the nectarine. One of my favorite foods is the nectarine. I think it was created by crossing plums with peaches. They wanted to get rid of the fuzz. They mixed the two plants together, became genetically altered, and now we have the nectarine, delicious food. Now that's different than what we're seeing right now in labs. The question is, are genetically modified organisms safe? Well, there's been some mixed studies, and frankly not, I don't think, enough studies for us to have released it into the diet of the general population. Personally, in my opinion, I think there should have been more studies before it was released into the environment. But, you know, we will let history decide. But for the time being, there simply isn't enough research that I've found to say yes or no. So if you are in doubt and you're worried about the environmental impact of genetically modified foods, then I would recommend consuming organic soy instead, if you just want to be on the safe side. And there may be an environmental benefit to going with an organic versus a genetically modified soybean. So that about wraps it up for me. That was me covering the three most common myths about the soybean. And I would say that based on all the research that I've seen, soybeans are incredibly healthful. I do include them in my diet. I don't eat them very often, but I eat them occasionally. My favorite thing to eat is tempeh, but I like tofu as well. Okay, I want to thank you for watching this video on the soybean. Be sure and share, like, subscribe, and tell me what your favorite dish is with soybeans, and tell me what you think of this video. Thanks for watching. Take care. Bye-bye.